Devesh. And, I hope everyone is staying safe and having good times. We have an eclectic panel today, who will be discussing with us about the journey of AI analytics in the space of BFSI. I'll not take much time, but I would want to set up some context and some housekeeping rules here. When we talk about the new Next Roundtable series from 3AI, we are bringing it to you in association with Xtech Alpha, which is a new age thought leadership accentuation platform. And our roundtable series are essentially focused upon exploring capabilities, applications, use cases of AI adoption in multiple different industries. We had our first session last week wherein we focused on CPG and retail industry. And today, as I said, we are focusing on banking, financial services, and insurance industry. As part of this roundtable, not only we discuss the current state of AI analytics in these industries, but we are also going to be discussing the upcoming AI and analytics opportunities for the new age and existing professionals, on the business, domain, technology, and functional side. I do understand that we do have a lot of students joining us. We are very hopeful that these discussions would be proving very helpful to you as you work towards shaping up your career, to start your career in the space of AI analytics. A couple of requests there. One, I would request everyone, all the participants, to please go on mute and not to switch on your camera. It will not give us a very good experience if we have background noise, while our speakers are discussing the topic for today. My second request to you is please use the chat window for any questions that you may have. We have a good amount of time slotted towards the end of the session, wherein we will have an opportunity of posting your questions to the speakers and hear their comments on the same. And my third request would be please ensure that if you have any comments, any feedback, do post that on the chat window, or you can always send it to us on info@3ai.in. With that, let me bring to you our, the anchor, the host for the roundtable today, which is Anshu. And I'll not say much about her. I don't think I will be able to do justice, to the experience and expertise that she brings to the table. The only thing that I would say is, and I'll let her introduce herself to you in greater detail along with other participants. Anshu is the managing director and the global head of retail banking technology at StanChart Bank. And in this role, she is responsible for client onboarding, due diligence, statements, and products for over 30 global markets. I'll stop it there, and I'll now hand it over to you, Anshu, to take it forward from here. Thank you so much, and I
Thank
hope
you.
great discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Devesh. Thank you, and a very happy Friday to everyone. My absolute pleasure to be here in what should I say, August company of some of my good friends and industry colleagues. I'm hoping to have a good, absolutely thought-provoking discussion over the next 90 minutes. A little bit more about my career journey. It's been 24, 25 years. Primarily in the financial services space, have seen the industry evolve from the world of spreadsheets to data-driven insights, and then of course to analytics, and today when everything is digital. So that said, of course, looking forward to the discussion. And Amit, if I may ask you to introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Thanks, Anshu. It's a pleasure to be part of the 3AI forum. I am Amit. I head Swiss Re Bangalore setup in India. So those who are not aware of Swiss Re, we are 157-year young organization. We call ourselves as a risk knowledge company. We are the market leaders on the reinsurance side. But we also have commercial insurance, and we also incubated a startup, right, within our own organization, which is, more or less, you can call it a unicorn. You can give it a unicorn status as well. So So as an organization, we truly believe in making the world more resilient. And the setup that we have in Bangalore is more of a microcosm of the entire group, which cuts across all the business unit and the entire value chain. With regards to the career journey, it's been 17 years plus in the industry. Literally enjoyed. I just love the purpose, the strong social impact, that the industry offers, and that just keeps on driving me. So happy to be part of the panel discussion and looking forward to the dialogue.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. So maybe I will go next. So good afternoon, everyone. This is Himanshu Mittal. If I talk about myself, I have around a decade and a half experience of analytics and data science. So I have started my career with Cognizant Business Consulting, mostly into healthcare domain, entirely into data science. After spending 7 years at different roles in Cognizant Business Consulting, I moved to Boston Consulting Group, where I've actually spent around 6 years. I was part of their advanced analytics team, Gamma, and I was the initial few members. And when I have left BCG, it is a more than 300 member team focusing on to advanced analytics and AI. As a part of management consulting firm, I got an opportunity to actually lead big transformation cases into different domains, which include telco, insurance, as well as retail. And in my current role, I'm part of MetLife. I'm actually helping MetLife to set up an global analytics and research center in Hyderabad with pretty much the same objective that we are going to discuss in today's session, that how we can accelerate business using AI in insurance. So this is the setup that we are actually setting up. We already have MetLife set up in Noida, but the objective of this center is to have some specific data science team focusing on research in the area of insurance. So I am really looking forward to have this conversation with my fellow panelists. And yeah, thank you so much. Maybe Dr. Shivani, if you want to introduce yourself. I think you are on mute, doctor.
Thanks, Himanshu. Thanks, 3AI, and very happy to be part of this discussion with all knowledgeable leaders in this industry. I'm in this industry for nearly 2 decades now, and as Anshu was saying, that I have also seen the journey of status data science, and now we call it AI, and seen, I think,
Your voice is breaking, Shivani. I'm not sure whether it's only me or Anshu. Can you please
Only
confirm?
you.
Okay.
Even I can't hear.
There was a connection lag.
That was
is
an
it
insider joke. Okay.
sure? So,
Yes, now you're as well. Yeah.
So worked on basically how we can make customer journey much seamless from AI-driven automation perspective. Currently, I'm from past couple of months, and I'm leading multiple verticals. Before Geo, I was with Capgemini, where I was leading the financial services AI team for APAC, and I have worked with all the different geographies, but never worked for India. So my role, or the reason I have chosen for Geo is, I think India can take a lot, or learn a lot from AI, but AI learn a lot from India because of the diversity what India offers, and the problems which India throws in front of AI. So that's my current role, and happy to hear the follow-up discussions on this part. Thank you. Nitin, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Shivani. First of all, I consider it my privilege, absolute privilege, to be a part of this group. Thank you, 3i. Just happy to be a part of this company of such accomplished professionals. As I hear every time about what people are doing, the kind of impact they're making, it just makes you feel so much more motivated to do that more and more. I'm also quite privileged to represent Wells Fargo. I am the consumer analytics leader in Wells Fargo, which is a very retail-centric focused role that I'm playing right now. Although Wells Fargo for the past 160 plus years has been a very customer-centric, consumer-centric company. It has evolved all the way from providing stage coaches for people to move their gold to now helping manage their most important asset, which is their money. And we continue to do that. no different than any other company's vision about being very customer centric and enabling AI or data driven decisioning to make sure that we are providing our services, products, which are very customer focused. Been in the industry for about 2 decades now, and while I have done many categorization projects where you would put a lot of labels on data, I always find it very difficult to put a label of where analytics, ML, statistics, AI have an interpretability between each other. Where do I put which label? So I always find that very, very confusing. So not to sort of confuse on that, but I consider myself an analyst at heart, which I've been doing for the past 2 decades, and I continue doing that, essentially to leverage data, extract insights, and make them useful and relevant for the business decisions. That's how I think about leveraging analytics and AI. Raj?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nitin. Hi, myself, Dviraj Bose. I take care of the data analytics, AI, and I think almost all the things related to the data for Bajaj Allianz. For all of you who won't know much, I think we are the largest private insurance company and who has been there and has been consistently making underwriting profit almost for 19 years. And I think the key for that is like doing things almost first as well as innovative using data. So I think now we are working on data, but this has been there for a long time. Regarding me, I think it's very privileged to have with some of my good friends as well as colleagues here, and I'm sure you will have a very valuable discussions and the takeaways from here. In terms, so I have worked in typically financial services, working there for more than 18 years, primarily working in a more of a build and transition mode. So a lot of the stuff we build and then move it into a maintenance and transition point of view. So in terms of like, I would say like I think I'll come back to the company point of view again. Like I think for the Indian market, we are managing around 16, 17 crores of customers, and we are also one of the largest insurance providers for the common man or the farmers. So I think a lot of AI use cases, everything gets used there. And I think starting from the Prime Minister's health scheme to using a lot of the technologies, drone and others also. So yeah, I think looking forward to the discussion. Over to you, Anshu.
You're on mute,
You're on
Anshu.
mute.
Classic syndrome. I think that's the most used phrase. If anybody were to do analytics on all the calls that happened last year, that was the most used phrase, right? Yeah. So, like I was saying, fantastic backgrounds, every single one of you. Like I said, some of you we know each other well, but it's just quite intense to see that there is such a beautiful mix. Right from and each one of you have seen the journey of how the industry has evolved, the uptake has happened, the challenges that sometimes you face. Amit, I'm sure you'll have a lot of insights as Swiss Re would have set up shop, an MNC coming in, setting up shop and so on. Similarly, MetLife as well, and I know the insurance industry somewhat. So it's I'm looking forward to having the next set of conversation. So let me start with perhaps Nitin, yourself, and Amit, you guys. Last year we saw digital acceleration like never before, right? It was a mindset shift. You call it by way of companies were pushed against the wall, but they realized very, very quickly and very nimbly that digital and using the power of data is the only is the way to go. And especially we saw the pace really, really getting picked up last year. What are some of your thoughts? And if you can also give some examples of what you have seen in your areas in terms of the acceleration that has happened across analytics and AI. And I use the words differently, analytics and AI, and not kind of, bucketing them together. Your thoughts, Nitin, if you would like to start, please.
Sure, thank you. So we may need to have a separate discussion to draw the line where we need to draw the line.
Indeed,
Jokes apart.
indeed. Yeah,
Jokes
yeah.
apart. Um, well, as you said, there were so many assumptions that were challenged and broken and reestablished about what can and cannot happen. And of course, all of us would have seen that meme. Who is the most effective agent in bringing about the digital acceleration in the organizations? And it was COVID, not the CEO, not the CIO, not the CTO, right?
Totally.
We all understand that. We all understand that. But essentially, what it has done is, I would say, it has only given us, from Wells Fargo perspective, a bit of a push and accelerate down the path that we were definitely already thinking about. And to my mind, what it has also done is force us to fasten the pace of what we can do on a more digital way, including things like very heavy relationship driven, conversation driven, brick and mortar sort of approach to our consumer banking, as well as wholesale banking, as well as mid market banking. Across all of these, where until now we thought that you cannot really run the business without necessarily sitting across the table and having that conversation and having that relationship. I'm not saying that that's being taken away, but
Yeah.
the
It's
digital
not also.
enablers.
Yeah.
Exactly, you cannot. But digital enablers are just enabling that. And when we do those things digitally, what it does in the whole process is provide a lot of digital footprint. Every conversation has now a data trail that is getting left behind, whether it is about understanding what customer needs are, what they're saying, and not that we are doing it very, very, very well, but there is now an opportunity for us to extract information from every piece of data and use that data, use those insights back to make our product servicing and offering to customers. And there are a few things that we've already started off. And let me talk about things more from the wholesale, and then I can bring it down to more retail, which is where I see it up close and personal. Where in wholesale or commercial banking, you literally would have to have a very relationship-heavy conversation, and the amount of information that we had about the contracts that we had or the relations that we had was more narrow around that particular entity. But now with the availability of digital acceleration and data that is being available, now we can think of, and the COVID scenario has actually helped us stress test those scenarios on what is their entirety of value chain, their suppliers, their buyers, and how does that impact their particular business. So that has now given us a lot of good, insightful information about how we use that for our relationship. Taking it back to retail, we've taken a very customer-focused approach, which I'm sure is not rocket science. Anybody thinking about it commonsensically will arrive at that. Is to think about how we think of all the relationships from customer and retail banking point of view in a customer-centric way. How do I enable my products and services to be taken up and open a new relationship in the most convenient way? Once I have that relationship, how do I enable the servicing? And servicing could be push-based, pull-based, regulatory, whatnot. Instead of just making one-way communication, how do we enable that two-way communication? If the customers have a certain need on servicing their home loan, credit card, deposit account, anything that we have, how do we enable all those things in a digital way? So there is a lot of digital assets which are being produced and being made available to the customers. How do we enable payments? Because payments, we realized, was a big part of our interaction and transaction with our customers. And how do we make easier payments, not only through our platform, but through the ecosystem, playing with a lot of other fintech players as well. So we've enabled those as big priorities. And as I said a little while ago, the data that is now becoming available, how do I understand more about the customers, their life stage, their need, and use that in a more narrow, focused way of taking it closer to a customer segment and making that segment smaller and smaller and smaller? Can I take it to that segment of one, which is, of course, the holy grail of any marketing or any customer focused CRM focused company, is how do we make it very, very personalized? And now that availability of data, bringing that data together, looking at it from the problem that you're solving for the customers, is enabling that. So that's where we're using a lot of analytics and AI to understand, discern what the customer needs are, make them more relevant, time bound, life stage bound, as well as personalized. The entire thing about how do we give more control in hands of the people, and how do we make those controls more insightful? Simple things. We started looking at the credit card holders, and when they were sort of calling back to us, talking about some of the issues and complaints, and that was specifically about promo period. We found out that there's a lot of information that we can proactively provide to the customer so that they know which part of their balance is running at what interest levels. And if that information is just available to them through the digital channel that we are now talking about, the product that we're talking about, will make that information known to the customers upfront rather than they're trying to call and find out. So we're taking some of those customer focused initiatives. We're also trying to bring multitude of these things together, and we look at customer service as such as an entity by itself, but we're trying to bring it all together. How do I look at the offline online transactions for a customer, bring it together when somebody calls me to understand what could potentially be the reason, so that when I'm talking to as a customer service rep to the customer, I'm more aware of the overall relationship, the issues that may have had. Now it's very easy to say, but very difficult. I wouldn't say difficult. It has its own journey to go through to enable that intelligent, context-driven, cognitive insight in front of the customer service agents. And that's something. These are just a few examples of what we are trying to do to make ourselves more employee-centric, customer-focused, and leverage digital acceleration.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think, that's it's a common theme. Not saying that, not undermining what you guys are doing, but I think customer centricity, right? And those little things. Just an example, I was talking on mute in the previous segment, and Cisco, this interface actually popped up saying you are trying to speak and you are on mute. So, just those little tweaks. So I'm sure any product manager would have said this feature is not needed, deprioritize it. But now, it is absolutely the most used feature. Similarly, I think, our experience in the bank has also been that there were parts of the customer journeys that were broken. They were not 100% end-to-end digital. And I think COVID and last year, it has accelerated that tremendously. I'm sure, not blowing our own horns, but I'm sure you would have seen the Anushka Sharma ads that go around for Standard Chartered, which is, so basically we introduced video KYC because people were not able to come to branch or not entertaining relationship managers to go and visit them, etc. And, it was a complete end-to-end digital journey sitting at your home. You're able to do that. And the amount of data that, and precisely to your point, the data trail that you are able to now get, also NPS scores, because you realize that a lot of people were at home, people were, everything was digital. They were just using the NPS score data, the data points rather, and the actual data that comes in. You started getting a lot of rich data there rather than, you chasing people for feedback and so on.
Right.
So,
right.
It was all coming out voluntarily.
Right. And a post-transaction NPS, I think, gives only a snapshot. But what now it's allowing us to do is to link it to the transactions, the trail, and connect back to what are the reasons for which the customers are giving certain NPS. And that is actually becoming much, much more rich for us to use. And I'm sure it's the same with other banks as well.
Absolutely. All right. Amit, your thoughts on this, please.
Sure. So I think COVID impact, I mean, just continuing on what Nitin highlighted, right? Everyone saw the meme about how COVID has really disrupted on the technology side. And I think we really need to understand the context of insurance industry, because compared to banking, insurance has been largely a conventional industry. And over only last 4-5 years, there has been emergence of insurtechs or a drive even amongst incumbents to really trigger that disruption. And I think that's very positive, because insurance was always a kind of a push product, right? And if that can change into a pull, it will be a fantastic accomplishment. I think what COVID has also done is also accelerated more on the business side, because it has raised the risk awareness. I think people have now understood what is the value proposition of buying an insurance product for myself. What if something happens, how will the family be taken care of? If I get into 4 lakhs of health expenditure, maybe a protection there is helpful. So all these are, I would say, good ingredients for insurance industry to now accelerate, in terms of the technology adoption and AI, analytics, data. Everything is really coming together here. And if we talk about the adoption, it's not that nothing was happening over the last 5 years. So when we talk about application of AI analytics, there were already a lot of experiments, use cases which were happening across the entire value chain, right? And if we really look at even the patents which were filed on machine intelligence, most of those are actually coming on the customer service side or claims or operations. And here we are talking about automation of the client experience, chatbots, or on the operation side, how are you really automating the processes in a more intelligent manner, and not just the process automation. And if we look at the technology themes more from an outlook perspective, there is a tremendous potential, which is there in IoT. And IoT has a very significant application in insurance industry. So you talk about health, so everyone wears those wearables, whether those are watches or Fitbits, how that data is coming in and how that data can be used with multiple other data points to really understand the risk or the health profile of an individual, basis which you can get into better pricing and even create value add opportunities. So even if someone hasn't really filed a claim in a year, the premium should not just go waste, but they should be getting some value enhancement service in terms of free health checkup or advisory in terms of how they can be done. So you can literally use AI in creating a better, I would say, motivating people to become more healthy in that space. And similarly, you talk about IoT on the telematics side. I think usage-based insurance. I don't know if you all realize if your cars were parked in your garage or parking lot and you were still paying premium, is it justified? So when you haven't even driven your car, and it's not that it's a new phenomena. I mean, UBI has been there in existence for 15 years or so, but now with AI, it just has a very different way on how that can be applied and create. You can create value for customers. Similarly, there are applications on industrial side, and then you're talking about cybersecurity. So yeah, I mean, there's like a multitude of opportunities here, right? And if I take the example of Swiss Re, so we are a data-driven company. Without getting into the debate of analytics, for us, we've been pricing the contracts, with a lot of prediction, understanding, quantification of risk. If you call it analytics, great. Otherwise, this is business for us, right? On a day in, day out basis, and we've been doing for over 155 years. And now I think technology just creates a lot of possibilities in terms of how can we really bring internal, external data, do it much more real time. And I'll give you an example. I think over the last 3-4 years, we've been investing into a new business unit of sort of a venture, which is a B2B2C model where we just white label the insurance products, and it can give us opportunity to partner with a telecom company, with an e-com company, and very recently we even did it with IKEA in Singapore. To really offer a technology-based end-to-end insurance solution, right? Which is more of like a plug and play, which can be done. And at the end of the day, we are talking about how do we create more value, for the customer? How are we reducing the protection gap? Because if you really look at insurance penetration, it's extremely low across the world, and in India it's extreme, even lower than the world average. So how can you really bring insurance right where consumers are coming? If insurance is more of a push product, you maybe need to go to those platforms where customers just go because of their own needs, right? And if you can plug and play insurance as around that, I think that creates a lot of value. So if someone in Singapore goes to IKEA Singapore shop, they buy furniture, they can also buy home insurance, and that can be much more customized profiling, which can be done. The right pricing can be embedded. So there are a range of applications which can be done. But yeah, I do see in general, the AI will have significant value on the risk side, so how can we get better into protection and not just prediction? And by protection, I mean, if I can reduce the severity of a loss, or even the frequency of the loss, it's a win-win for both the customer as well as the insurance company. On a product standpoint, how can we create more customization, and that too at a mass level? And that's where AI again comes into the picture. So I'll give another example where in a specific market, we wanted to come up with a client solution where we would like to sell more of the life protection products. But generally, one of the resistant point is, the medical test. So a lot of people don't want to take insurance because they have to go through the drill of the test. and we wanted to know whether someone is a smoker or not. So we created our own AI models with a high accuracy to say whether this profile is a smoker or not, and really eliminating the need for such a test, right? And smoothing the onboarding experience of the customer, and thereby increasing the sales of the product, right? And so those are some of the opportunities, and of course we can discuss more of that. But yeah, it's I guess a turning point for the insurance industry.
Very, very interesting, Amit, especially the last bit on creating a model to determine if somebody is a smoker or not. I'm sure a lot of parents of teenage kids would like to have that as a plug-in module.
I was about to ask that. How do you do that detection? Is it available as an API?
Yeah, exactly. So that conversation separately. So yeah, there'll be interesting kind of packaging this. Yeah, no, but you're right, absolutely right. In today's parlance, especially with the millennials, they do not want a long-term commitment. They are already shy of, we've seen those trends, right? They do not want to buy things. They want to use services. So how do you offer them insurance where there are longer term commitments? Even traditional folks kind of, and you're right, in India, most of us start our insurance journey as a tax saving option, and not truly as a, something that we need to do. So, but yeah, it's a very, very exciting space. Let me just switch gears a little bit. We've also seen the industry, especially in the BFSI space, kind of partnering with innovation. There's a lot that's happening in-house, but there's also a lot happening in the fintech space, right? The ecosystem is developing and so on. And I know Dviraj and Himanshu, both of you run large centers, both very, very large companies. What has been your experience and what is your view? And Shivani, I'll come to you as well for this thought. But Himanshu, if I can start with you, what's your view on the co-creation and co-innovation, if you will, with fintechs? Any experience, any examples that you'd like to share?
Yeah, thanks, Anshu. I think this is a great question because it is one of the topic in the mind of the business leaders when it comes to insurance company. But if we just take a step back and try to see that so we'll find that there is something very basic in the purpose of these two type of companies. So while all these banking institution, BFI companies, these are actually legacy based company, and their main focus is actually more towards management of risk. However, fintech companies actually changing the game because they are actually trying to create an overarching customer experience. And because as all of us are aware, and I think you have also mentioned that the next 5 years or 10 years or decade is going to be more about customer centric. So insurance companies are also actually trying to make it a win-win. They're also trying to somehow partnering with fintech companies, or some of them are also creating their own apps, etc., to make a good customer experience. However, somehow companies, the traditional BFSI companies, still struggle to actually fully digitize the onboarding experience. So when there are areas like document verification, payment, digital signatures, there's an investment which is going on, but still the traditional BFSI companies are actually lacking a lot when it comes to fintech. And I think that is where comes an opportunity for the folks like us. Basically, analytics has a huge scope in adding a lot of value. And with this only mindset, companies are actually setting up these centers. So when I talk about MetLife, within last 3 months, if you talk about, there are actually 3 companies, including, I think, Progressive and Mass Mutual, have actually declared that they are going to invest around, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 1,000 crore. They are also going to set up center in Hyderabad. So I think many companies are actually trying to building their centers just from adopting the technology. However, I think one thing which needs to change in BFSI, and this is my personal experience, some of these traditional companies still see tech as an investment, as a cost, versus as an enabler to innovation. And that's the basic difference in the mindset of the leaders in fintech company versus the traditional BFSI company. The fintech company takes tech as an innovation. They actually try to create value out of it. But in BFSI, in the traditional company, because the leadership is also old. So we are also like 150 years old, Amit, as you said, you are a young organization, MetLife. So basically, still the leadership sees tech as a cost. And I think that also gives us a lot of opportunity in terms of this field, in terms of data science. If I take one example, I think one example that comes to my mind where they have actually done it successfully, it comes from China. So I'm sure some of my fellow colleagues are aware of this company called Ping An. Basically, it is pretty new, not as new as like some other companies, but like 30-year-old as compared to MetLife. And they are right now the world's largest insurance, except a couple of companies. And what these guys have done differently, Anshu, basically for 10 years, they have actually invested 1% of their revenue, which is approximately 10% of their profit into this technology, which include AI, blockchain, etc. And they've actually built certain tools from recruitment till customer service. So let's say if somebody has to be somebody wants to work there as an agent, they have to actually interact with some AI enabled system, which will actually evaluate your voice, the words you will use, your body posture, and then they will actually try to decide whether this agent is actually going to be productive for us or not. And this actually comes because of their typical mindset that technology is going to be an innovator versus a cost. And that's what actually made them different than the traditional insurance company. So I think it would be unfair to say that the traditional companies are not thinking in that direction. I think COVID has actually made them even think beyond what they were thinking initially. And I think many companies are investing a lot and they want to actually collaborate with fintech, or maybe they want to build their own system. But I think if I have to summarize the couple of things that they have to think, they have to actually look at investment beyond cost. They have to actually hire talent. So McKinsey has actually conducted this survey. They have actually talked to the CIOs and CEOs of big insurance company, and 70% of CEOs highlight that 40% of their technical workforce need to be either replaced or retrained. And they have also highlighted that this is one of the reasons why they are lagging behind in the digital journey. So I think it's already late, I would say, to some extent when it's compared to fintech. But I think leaders are in the positive mindset of that, and we can say that with the investment that is coming to the picture, I feel that both fintech and traditional BFSI, they have their strength, right? So basically, if you think from the traditional BFI perspective, they have the infrastructure already. They have a lot of trust in the customers. They have industry expertise, and at the same time, fintech is brings a new technology and agility. So I think there is a lot of scope for insurance companies and fintech companies to know from each other, because fintech can learn the industry expertise and the trust that these companies have built over the period of time, and the traditional companies can actually learn how to adapt technology, how to actually make the customer experience better. So I think both of these going to be coexist. There will be a great collaboration that we are going to see. Some are already happening, like ICICI has done the collaboration with Paytm, right? And that was quite successful. And as Nitin and Amit was also mentioning that the digital adoption has grew by 20% in this pandemic, in this COVID. Even Paytm has also reported that an increment of 30 to 40% in their digital sales. So no company can actually afford to lose this digital traction. And I think that, the only advice to fintech company, I think from my side is, while technology is important, innovation is important, customer, experience is important, but the privacy is also equally important. So I think they have to focus on customer privacy. They have to actually look into the trust that these companies have built over the period of time. And I think that then we will see a lot of traction. Usage of analytics is already happening, and I think it will be even much more in the days to come. And I think there will be a lot of opportunity for all the people who are into this field, in the field of fintech or maybe BFSI. Yeah.
Sure. No, thanks, Himanshu. Very, very well said. Absolutely. That there is a space for both of them to coexist and co-create and actually complement each other. While the traditional companies are not saying that innovation does not happen there, but yes, the pace is slower because it's a large ship versus a small boat that can make a quick turnaround very, very quickly. They don't have the baggage. Absolutely. And I love the bit about McKinsey. I think in all of this, McKinsey is making a lot of money. Doing the
Yeah, you are right. This is true for all consulting firms.
Yeah.
They always do.
Yeah, absolutely. Dviraj, over to you for your comments on this, please.
Yeah, I think first of all, I think we need to do as a company a better job on marketing. So in terms of what we are doing. So I think to Amit's point, I think when you're talking about this lockdown, I'm kind of relating, I'll jump to the actual query here. But when during the lockdown, we realized there's people are paying this insurance for the whole year. We need to develop this kind of, I would say like the buffet product, or there are different names, but the short time span product. So we developed it, our pay as you go product, and we launched it I think within 2 days it got over. I think thanks to the Indian regulators also in insurance company, they have created a sandbox environment. Now think of a situation like I've been working in many places, but here a regulator is coming and promoting us to experiment. So that actually created a lot of this product, like be it pay as you go, as you talked about, like detecting smokers and many other diseases also. through your photographs, videos, those kind of thing. Regarding blockchain, if you have a Bajaj Allianz travel product, like have a trip cancellation product, like what it has is, if your trip gets cancelled, you are going to get credited for that. So you won't even realize that your flight is delayed. The block, your money is going to get credited to you. So a lot of these works is already done, I think, and I think we as a company, I don't know where will we fit. We are 19 years old, so at that time the startup concepts are not there. Like, so my boss, the CEO, he talks about like we are considered one of the successful startup. But now coming back to that point, I think let's try to understand what is this. What is the issue with the traditional firm? So, and it starts with like the customer itself. So typically the way that most of the traditional firms is based or build has been built through the intermediaries who has access to some certain kind of customers, and they're grooming and they're kind of controlling the customers. Now there has been a shift in that. So in terms of now customers has taken the center stage. So what that does is like now they don't care like whether I'm taking it from the intermediaries or I'm taking directly to the customer. So more and more shift has been there in the direct on the direct part, right? And one of the big challenge, at least for the and I think I should first split the whole BFSI into two parts. I think as Amit was talking about, there are certain pull products like the home loan and stuff which people need, and there are certain like the push products like the insurance. We are still struggling. It's still in the borderline. I would say a little bit more journey to do. But what happens is like when you acquire, when you take a new policy, the challenge starts with the policy admin system, and or the people call it a legacy system. Uh, and I think as most of our colleagues, we are in the journey of transition, rather very close to the transition where we are moving away from the system. That used to be a big bottleneck. Why I can't do experiment? Why I can't do any of the other things? Now what that has done is like with all the focus in the last few years, be it the incumbent players, I think Amit was talking about, and I think Vanshu is talking about, we have been all doing, we have been ingesting the technology. The appetite is there, and I think the regulators have been definitely much more proactive and helpful for us to conduct those things. And now as we integrate it, the line has really blurred. The line has really blurred, and I think many cases like traditional players are beating the insurtechs, and insurtechs are struggling. It's finding it difficult also to make money in the long run, because see, ultimately what is very important is like the traditional players have realized the value of the customers and the need for the terms, even like the customer experience, having a different team to take care of it, having the technology team to with a goal around like more proactive goal around how can we ingest some of the technology, how can we build something on our own. So it's a very nice, well balanced ecosystem that is in making. And I think with the advantage of the conventional firms are the customer base. And I think if you see, I'm sure once we talk about each of the firm, we spend some part of the time in acquiring new customers, but I think more part of the time now nurturing the customers, taking care of them, whether it goes for attrition or so that we don't want to lose it, because now they have realized the value. And I think that particular customer itself is driving a lot of the value chain, I think. And I think that's why the lines are getting blurred. But at the same time, there will be, I think, still uh, differently many ways, I would say, like many ways to write, or let's say even in all the BFSI, it's a big part of it about writing risk. So they will continue to write risk better in an experimental framework. But I think I'll say like it's not only about building a car. If you want to build a factory, you need to have an assembly line of process. It's just like the process and things have changed, and I think that's where as the ecosystem is involved and evolved. And I think as in especially in India, and I think bring the context of India, the lines are really getting blurred, because earlier what used to happen, like even the Indian firms, from whatever belief and firm, the way the KPIs used to get written, very much sales-driven KPIs, the distribution of sales-driven KPIs. Now those have changed. Those have changed. People sitting in the board and in the boardroom are from the AI background. They are directing it, and then how to detect it. And of course, what that does is like also create that incremental value addition from these fields. And so a lot of the decisions, I'm sure all of us involved here are getting, it's like AI first, data first, then it's coming. Customer first, data first, then it's like the business as a result of it. So what that is like a huge sea change in the way the whole ecosystem is evolved. And I think as over the period of time, and I think so. If somebody is on.
I think there's some noise on the line. Can I request the audience to go on mute, please? Thank you.
Thank you. So other part I think also is like I think very important part for the BFSI sector as is talking about the regulators. So if somebody
I
can,
think it's Arshu Kumar Agrawal. If you can please go on mute.
Arush Kumar Agrawal.
Arush.
Okay, thank you. So other part is like let's not undermine the ecosystem that has been created by the government, especially in India. And I think the way they are promoting the whole NITI Aayog and the way even having a separate representation from the data analytics, AI field, technology field, having a CTO. So running even the governments in a more professional way, because I think in my role I work very closely with the governments, and you'll be like surprised. Like I think the way the startups or like the fintech or the insurtechs and the conventional players, they are partnering to deliver the value to the customers or our citizens is immense. Because of course everybody has some niche market and strength, but so it's more cooperative ecosystem that is getting evolved. And I think as a everybody is quite excited, and I think all of us should be very much excited being part of this data community, because data is going to play a big role here.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Thank you, Dwi. Absolutely, spot on, right? And I think data. Two things are very critical about data. We all know that it needs to be available when you need it, and you need to know where to find it. So yeah, Shivani, we've been waiting to hear from you, and very interesting perspective from a geo side. And obviously, we want to also leverage on your earlier experience of the BFSI world as well. What are some of the things? What are your, first of all, on the discussion so far? Any perspectives that you have in terms of what you are seeing as the innovation? Geo, of course, has been a true disruptor in this space, and again, came in as a fintech equivalent or a startup sort of with a startup mindset, did not have a baggage of some of the other players in the same segment have, and really kind of blitzkrieg, if I can say that. What is your perspective? And while you're at it, I'll also like to ask you, some of your thoughts on compliance and of the algorithms, etc. that you see.
Thank you, Anshu. I think great thoughts put together by Himanshu and Dviraj. Just to add to that point, I think when I have worked with both traditional banks and fintechs, even in service industries, to understand the different ecosystem. And what I've realized that traditional banks always go by I think iterating some of the challenges what industry is facing and giving them a different route. So take example of ATM. When it was built, it is just providing banking anytime to the customer. Then we have come up to a mobile banking, which is banking anytime. But when you look for these organizations, they are changing the world. The banking is being done today. Just giving a couple of examples or numbers here, 92% of China mobile transactions are going through two technology firms. Though that is, one is Ant Financial, Alipay, and Tencent WeChat. That is not the traditional banking any organization one can think about. So that's the disruption all these fintechs and you can say market by providing customer a seamless service, seamless transaction possibility. I think if you think about what position of banks in China before COVID, it has only added 6% more transactions for banking organizations. It was 98% earlier for Tencent and WeChat. Now it is 6% is being taken over by banks. So I think the thought what I'm bringing in is that traditional organizations are doing their best to give the, you can say, seamless services to customers. But I think it needs to be looked into a different way altogether, where we are providing that inclusion, financial inclusion to everyone, which probably traditional players were not able to do it. Think about India, where we have nearly 40% of the population which is unbanked or underbanked, right? I think we have not looked very closely to that population at all. The number is really half in US, which is around 22%, but still that population exists, and we don't have any credit bureau which caters their need. What could be the alternate way of utilizing or building a credit bureau for people who have never banked, or they have never been a possibility to even opening the bank account? So those are the things which fintechs are coming up. Jio has a lot of different various opportunities which we are trying to see and come to this space in terms of, can we utilize a mobile number, which is one of the major commodity for all the unbanked population. Can that be used as one of the way we can identify a credit score for customers? The other things which I think people are looking this financial inclusion part. I think the evolution of Paytm in India, where today even the pani puri guy or a vegetable thela guy has a Paytm to take it. That service is never been thought through about the end customer from traditional players. WeChat is offering the insurance product over the chat. Amazon is coming up with a insurance product which you can buy in a portal or even with the chat option. I think the fintech is evolving much faster than traditional players. Yes, that Anushka Shankar ad looks type of video KYC, which used to be kill your customers with paperwork, but still I would feel that why customers need to fill a form rather than just sending all the documents to bank, and bank can do everything, all the processing in the back end. So I think we have to think from how we can evolve from a customer journey perspective, rather than just decreasing the cost of our backend operations. How can we provide a seamless service the way Amazon Pay or Paytm of the world is offering in the industry, and give that kind of financial inclusion to our customers. This was probably more from a fintech view what I'm having, and I feel that it is more about rather than thinking traditionally, we have to think from that first principle of design thinking, rather than just probably incrementally making things better. We have to think absolutely in a different way, like Elon Musk has done. Earlier, it used to take like $6,000 of money to take 1 kilogram of probably product to send it to space. Now it has come to around $30 US. So that's the evolution he has done, thinking very differently, thinking from you can say bottom line, and coming up with the new ideas. That's my thought from probably how the fintechs are giving a good competition, very healthy competition to our traditional players. There is no way they can win the kind of amount of trust what traditional players have. I think it's not a very far thing where rather than 2-minute instant doodle, Amazon, someone will offer 2 minutes instant loan where everything will be done, even the money would be deposited in your account within 2 minutes of time. So I think we are here to see that migration of journey, what industry is going to bring together here.
I
think, yeah.
Please keep going. Please keep going.
No, Amit, close your thought. I'll move to the other topic.
Okay. No, so I think we were talking about, and I really liked your analogy of Pani Puri Wala and 2-minute noodles. What I think of it is, and by no means I'm trying to say that, we have to be complacent or the large players have to be complacent, but it's like, are we serving the entire healthy meal to the customers, or are we just building and serving them a decadent dessert, which of course is very good in terms of customer experience and, attracts them, or 2-minute Maggi noodles, which of course is very attractive, very quick, convenient, but is not necessarily meeting the needs of the entire health needs of the customer, right? So if you think of it from that point of view, it's very important. We cannot remain oblivious to the others. We have to have that mindset which Himanshu was talking about, but also think about the holistic ecosystem.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's either it has to be somewhere jointly collaboration between the fintechs and
Precisely.
the
I think it's
traditional
offering
players.
that bouquet of options, right? And sometimes you may want to choose this versus that, depending on what you feel like that day, right? So I think this analogy is very, very interesting. Yeah, Dr. Shivani, your thoughts on the other piece on governance and compliance of all these algorithmic models, and then perhaps we'll straight away jump into questions.
Sure. Thanks, Anshu. So I think the way AI is evolving now, earlier we used to have the accuracy first, right? We used to have a most accurate model in where we used to come to accept the modeling piece. But now I think the bias is taking over the accuracy. We want to balance the bias along with the accuracy. No matter if the model is 99% accurate or not, but it has to be unbiased model. Traditionally, I think we did not have that kind of a mechanism to remove the bias from the historical data, which we used to use to model building process. That is coming up as one of the probably key legal, you can say, obligation in the in BFSI industry, where part of not only regulation, but also the way I think software industry work, where you have all these testing mechanism with respect to legal compliance, your security, privacy. Now AI models need to have a fairness review where the models are fair or not fair. I think transparency is getting evolved, I think, in last couple of years really well, where we are able to create explainable AI models. But I think the second part, apart from biasness, is how do we justify the kind of attributes we are getting for the models. So I'll give one more example. I think there was one research which has been done where some people were trying to differentiate between dog and wolf using computer vision technology, and it was 99.9% accurate model. But when people dig a deep dive in terms of which part of the image it has given a discrimination, it came out that it was the background of the wolf and dog, where they were seeing some part of the snow, a white background. But is that the right analogy to differentiate customers? Or right way to probably write, is that a right attribute to identify differentiation or classification of things? So it's more about how do we utilize these AI solutions to create or probably one, make it explainable. Second, also make it a really business oriented attribute, which is helping us to probably identify the right customers for right portfolio kind of thing. So biasness, yes, it is coming as a one independent field altogether, and I think people who are really interested to jump into the AI, I think I'll encourage to look into that field as a separate entity altogether. That's my quick thought, Anshu.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll have one last question, especially because we have some students in the audience as well. In terms of what are some of the skills that that firms would be looking at, especially as we as the analytics and AI uptake matures in each of the organization. So some thoughts on that, and then we'll jump straight into the questions. I don't know, Amit, would you like to take this up? Okay, sure. Nitin, go ahead, please.
Okay. I've mentioned that earlier as well to many of the students that I was speaking to. Try not to become package data scientist, which is just don't have the ability to pull a package and use it for what you're solving. Invest more on problem solving, invest more on understanding the algorithms, the intuition behind it, and connect it to the problem that you're going to solve. I think that's the most important skill, at least I look for, and I'm sure pretty much everybody looks for as well. But if I come across somebody who can only use it via a particular package, use the packages, be the most efficient way of solving it, but don't let that be a crutch. Let that be your enabler.
Absolutely.
And maybe
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Amit.
Okay, so maybe just to add on to that, for me, when it comes to technology, tools, techniques, these are your enablers, right? And they change every 2-3 years. And you have to be, of course, updated about that. But I think the differentiating factor in terms of how do you really create value out of this AI algorithm is essentially understanding what is the real business need or customer pain point that we are trying to address. So for example, if in Swiss Re, we organize our innovation workshops, if it's a 5-day workshop, 3 days are going into just understanding the problem, before you're jumping into the solution. I think a lot of time people directly, as Nitin was highlighting, take a package and start, analyzing the data without really understanding what it is. So I think unless you bring that business need, unless you do that analysis, unless you understand the critical aspects of the industry dynamics, where your company stands, what are you trying to solve, AI will not create an impact, right? Fancy tools will not create an impact. So I think that has to be the starting point. Business first, then bring the tools, your own curiosity, experiment, and then move on.
I think I agree with Amit. Just to add to that point, I think we need more of a solution architect or problem solver people. And technology is, I think AI is going all different direction. Data scientist is top in that list. But entire data journey, you have UI expert, your RPA expert, your all the automation experts are also going to be part of this journey. And I think doesn't matter which technology you come from, AI will find I think a good player from all these technologies.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I should just one thing. Sorry, if I just to
Go
interrupt you.
ahead.
Just one thing. I think I couldn't agree more with Nitin, Amit, and Shivani what you said. I think one thing which I have also seen in my experience, that people are getting more and more fascinated with these buzzwords like AI, computer vision, etc., and they forget to give importance to the basic maths and statistics. So I think as students, especially to the students, I encourage always, especially the people who join directly from the college, they know how to build an AI model, but they don't know what is p-value. So I think I always encourage them that the hypothesis testing, which used to be traditional, which used to seem traditional these days, it is equally important. And I think the algorithm and programming is still only 30 to 40%. 60 to 70% is basically business problem, change management, and otherwise whatever you will build, mostly it will be a POC. If you really want to get value, you want to implement it, you have to actually understand the concepts, you have to focus on people and processes, and that, according to me, based on my experience, is more than 60%. As Amit and Nitin said, I think programming languages, when I started with SPSS, then it was SAS, then R, then Python. Tomorrow it will be something else. And I am pretty sure that in next 5 to 10 years, maybe you don't need to program at all. Everything would be like just drag and drop. And we already have tools like Alteryx, etc., right? So I think what would be difficult to teach anybody overnight is that problem, solving mindset. And that is something which you should give most important to, because everything else can be learned. Yeah,
I think exactly. I think all this is exactly covered very well. Manshu. So see, I think especially for the students, when we are going and looking for the campus, we don't expect you to know certain things, right? Like that you will be knowing how to implement it, how to know the whole pipeline and stuff like that. So for you, I think just have an open mind and know anything. The conventional question is R, Python, SAS. So what even Excel, even what doesn't matter even if you don't know. I think as Himanshu pointed out, the p-value is a very basic thing, right? I think so. Stick to the basics, but have something which you really in your armor, which is like very well. So no, you don't need to be a jack of all trades here. You should. It's not possible, feasible. None of us are sitting here. I can say like we know. Maybe we don't even know 50% of the 90% of the stuff. But what builds us is like you should know something very well, very deep, and with the whole thought process, and you should be able to be in a problem solving mode, because that's exactly this going to be there. Should not be in a technology dependent, because I think as an organization also, that's the hiring. As an organization, we already value that. So like while we have people who is working in the R, will be working in the Python, SAS, SPSS, doesn't matter. Everything hitting to the same database. So, but when we interview, when we look for is like your problem solving attitude, how you are solving. We are often, I think, as a practitioners also, we are not successful. You remember this. We are not successful in most of our cases. But what matter is the learning you are getting, how you are thinking through. And very often you will see in the interviews, we are not asking for the right answer or the correct answer. We are asking how you are thinking about it, the whole approach you to solve the problem. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, and love the look at this, right? Because this is something very, very close to all our hearts, because we go through this every now and then in the organization as well. And I would just add my 2 cents to this, that most of the times we see people just kind of building models, and this is true for both technologists and also folks coming from the business background. But answering the question, so what, right? What are the insights? How does it solve the business problem? I think that is where the real meat is. And not to forget the underlying data. I think data engineering is obviously emerging as the hottest career and most sought after career as well. But it is also important to understand where the data is coming from, how the data is talking to each other, and which data sets you should go after. So I think it's a mix of everything. So build on some of those skills. And I think, yeah.
And to add to that, Anshu, I think what I've also seen, one of the other things emerging is, they think of themselves as very narrow and cast themselves into a particular ironclad things, that I will only build models. I will not go get my hands dirty with the data. As you say, data engineering, unless you have data, you'll not be able to do anything without that.
Absolutely. So don't straight back at yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. Don't bind yourself. Have the ability to expand horizontally through the entire spectrum of analytics, from preparing a very simple report to a dashboard to even the most complex neural network model. And that is, at least in my mind, the whole definition of what analytics or data-driven decisioning is.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thanks for that. Let's quickly take some questions. I know we have about 20-25 minutes for questions. Some of them are coming in chat, and actually I see one from Kaushal Belluri. Kaushal, if you are the same Kaushal that used to work with me 20-25 years back, so big shout out to you. And thanks. If that's the case, then I can't thank this platform enough for reconnecting us. But we'll come to that. The first question was, in the consumer space, how's the banking industry ready for the threat of disruption by fintech? I think we had a good discussion about it. And I don't think any of us on the panel view it as a threat that we need to protect ourselves against, right? You heard us saying that we need to co-create. It's an ecosystem. We need to learn from each other. There is nimbleness there on the other side. There is trust and experience on this side. And there are some very, very successful partnerships. So I'll pass that on. The next one is, what ML ops platforms were used to run the AI experiments?
I think it depends. I think if I can jump into, it depends on a lot of objective. What are the use cases? How you are comfortable? What you want to build. For example, there are a bunch of platforms available. Starting from I think the most popular one probably is with the Microsoft Azure, and or Amazon SageMaker, or even and then the data robots, stuff like that, Algorithmia. So I think you just ask for it. There are many of them are open source as well. So I think a lot depends where you are, at which vintage, and what are the use cases, what are the purpose you are looking for. And I think it's just like for example, I created my own, in the sense we created our own customized platform, leveraging some of them. But I think otherwise, at least that's for me, because I think for some of the cases it was not, we needed a more of a customized platform. But in general, if you're looking for an end-to-end thing, any of those conventional platform, because they are also catering to the we as a customers. So even if some of them has some or other challenges for some time, they are very good servicing customers. I think they respond to you. They are technical guys, irrespective of the platform. I think that's a thing. I think more important part is be very clear on the use cases and how you want to deploy.
Thanks for that. Shivani, if I can point the next question to you, please. How are you correcting bias in decision support models, for example, in underwriting and others?
I think that's a very good question. And as I was saying, I think a lot of psychologists are coming into the picture. Can be available in that traditional. I think nearly 60 and I'm assuming touch 100 or 200 in next 1 or 1.5 year, because exists. So that's a different layer of governance regulation coming to the picture. Just the product approach. Data science would be probably more of a user of identifying those biases rather than identifying the biases which could be available in the data. I hope I have answered the question.
Sure, Dr. Shivani. Just that, you were a little bit, I think the connection was a little bit flaky in between. Can I request you to just summarize that again? I don't think, it would have come across to everyone. Yeah, sorry. If you can just concisely,
So what I was saying, that there is a different line of you can say offering which is coming from the bias. This is more of a psychologist who are trying to understand the biases can be available in the data, because this is all historical data from geographic perspective or from the product perspective. So or AI would be more of a user of that study rather than inventing ourselves from the data, because we might be able to identify very simple bias like male, female, or type, how people different biases. Psychologists are working on that part.
If I could just add a little bit on that, I think to be first aware that all the things that we have done in the past would not have been bereft of any biases is a very good starting point. So that going forward, we are very consciously adding something else, which is like a clean data set, if I can call it, to make sure that it's giving us that view, which may not until now be available with us if we were to look only at historical data. Things like, and many of these things have been done in very small pockets. Whenever we would do any target modeling in the past, you would do reject inferencing, because you know that there are some people who you have not got on your books who would have behaved very differently. And that sort of helps continuously keeping your models in check and not let them gravitate towards one or the other. Also, using AI for the virtuous circle, there are now tools available where you can actually generate data which has some sort of unseen hitherto unseen cases being taken care of, and train your models on that. So let that be very conscious effort rather than just doing what you've been doing for too long.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Nitin. Yeah, because there were a few other questions coming on, bias in the data and how do you kind of, take care of that or eliminate that. The next question is, where does AI and data science or analytics sit in the BFSI sector? Do we still need to look for innovators, or do we believe that we've moved to early adopters? And this is perhaps in the more context of the technology adoption in all the BFSI players.
Yeah, so I think I can take this one. So I think, in most of the BFSI company, analytics is one of their key agenda. So I think they are not waiting for any other to move it, to take a leap ahead. However, they are doing a lot of POCs. It's just that it is not going at a scale so far. So basically all the deep learning techniques, like Amit was talking about tele underwriting, right? So initially you have to do a test. Now this thought has been on the table for a long time that can we avoid that test? And with this COVID, actually there are certain companies who have actually implemented to that level. Also, when you talk about PNC, like telematics, right? So right now the proportion is less, but many companies are actually doing the minimum viable product where they want to offer an insurance just after, based on your behavior rather than your actual age. So it doesn't matter whether you're a teenager, but if your driving behavior is good, then you are going to pay less premium. So all those things are already there in the table. And I think I can talk about MetLife, and I think Divraj can also talk about Bajaj Alliance. Many insurance companies are actually doing those things at the back end. It's just that they have not been scaled to the measure of the population. But I think in the coming days, maybe in the upcoming 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you will see a major shift in the way insurance companies are doing business right now and how they will do in future. And it is going to be more and more digital. So I think it is definitely sitting and as the main digital agenda in all the BFSI, and at least the BFSI firm that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that becomes an opportunity. That becomes an opportunity for all of us, because companies are actually investing. They are ready to invest a lot of money in setting up these teams. And I think that becomes an opportunity for all the folks who are in the data science field. Yeah, sorry. I think somebody was saying something.
Yeah, okay.
Amit, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Dhiraj. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to maybe share an example here, right? It's the adoption within the organization. How are you really looking at AI and analytics? So maybe a journey, 3 years ago. So as an organization, yeah, as I was mentioning, we are data-driven organization, and a lot of beliefs, expertise, judgments coming in, right? And we triggered a transformation. We created a project called Stargate. We tied up with Palantir, so that's one of the global data science platform company. Yeah, and we created a very bespoke program, and our objective was to democratize AI and analytics within the organization, right? So even if people, they are not hardcore data scientists or programmers, they can adapt themselves to that. So our organization size is 12,000 employees globally, yeah, and we have now almost 2 to 3,000 users on that platform, and not everyone is from a tech background, and they are able to and what this is really helping is, firstly, from a data perspective, I think data is the foundation, right? So unless you're able to bring data together from literally across the systems, make it put it on the cloud, and it's not just internal data but also external data, and then really training the algorithms. And algorithms, once are getting trained, they are not just the property of one team or one function or one country, but the entire organization is able to use it, right? So we are actually transforming on this data topic, yeah, so that the data becomes the strategic asset of the entire enterprise and not just for one team or one function, right? And everyone, yeah, who have a flair of using the tool and with a lot of curiosity and self-learning, they can actually get into that and start working on that, experiment on that, and start building models around it. So I think there is also a transformation which is not about just solving the problems, but also really changing the mindset within the organization, so that we can really look at more at the enterprise-wide solutions as well at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, you have to embed data science in each and everyone's agenda, right?
Right. I think just to add few examples, like we have, like, being a general insurance company, we have a lot of the use cases end to end. Like, for example, when the flood happens, it's a, or like there's like a flood, or even the drought happens in the crop. So we don't go for or we don't always send a physical surveyor. There are drones, there are satellite images they are getting, and even through the Pradhan Mantri, the whole the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Yojana, we are
Jan Dhan
crediting.
Yojana.
Yes, PMYJY. So always I get it wrong. So it's getting credited to your bank account. So now try to think about that using the technology and the data that is there in this. And I think that just to other points also, like I think it's no longer the case. Like I think it's just like innovation and the skills. I think a lot of, I think it's the mindset, and I think we need to, I think to my first point, as an industry, when we are talking to our regulators, IRDA, and even like the government, we are also talking about a lot of the things on the mindset. Like, okay, insurance is there, they are probably, or the BFSI segment, especially insurance, it is behind. But a lot of the use cases, it's there at scale. Leveraging the telematics data, leveraging, let's say, like if we have a tie-up with Fitbit, the Fitbit devices you have, based on your exercise pattern, and you can get better deals. And I think important part is, like, there are two parts. One is like consumers, how they are perceiving each of these products. That's what I said. Like, it a lot depends. The opportunity is much more when you are in a push kind of product. Like, and suppose I need a loan for something, you can do because it's driven by the consumer, versus a pool where things gets in the back end in terms of servicing.
Yeah, no, I think great examples there, everyone. And I think, from our perspective, it is, I don't think, to fit it into a consulting parlance, saying, are we an early adopter stage, or are we a a late entry stage or a late majority or any other stage. I think it's more about, even in the technology space, the conversation is more about what is the business outcome. It's no longer about my platform or this platform does X, Y, Z, but it's about what can it solve for the business. So every technology CIO conversation is also today all about solving the business problem, and not about I have this tool set and it is so those are absolutely a given. Availability on cloud, scalability, open source, total cost of ownership, all of those things, hygiene factors are sort of given. But other than that, it is all about what can solve the business problem. I think the appetite is absolutely huge, especially in India. I know Dr. Shivani alluded, and everyone as well, that the use cases are so interesting and so different, and the scale of it, right? Whether it's in the payment space, whether it's in the insurance space, whether it's in the retail space, CPG space, whatever have you. I think the use cases, and there is a segment for everything. So I think it's a very, very interesting time and an exciting time. And technologists are also willing to listen to what is the business problem I'm solving. I think they are also being measured on that, and not about how many, what's the size of your team.
Right. So, and to my mind, I think anything as large as any large organizations that we are all representing, it's very difficult to tag and put one consistent tag to the entire organization, right? There are pockets where there is absolutely cutting edge innovation that is happening. At the same time, there are pockets where you have to run the business. You have to make sure that you are doing things which are right now the ones that make sense. Regulators allow it because there are obviously these regulatory tug of war that continues as well, right? Whereas if there are small companies which are pure play innovators, as we think of them, are right now not even coming under the scanner in terms of what data are they using. But tomorrow, if they have to come and become a part of the overall ecosystem, that lens will also be put on them. So I think it's a combination of all, and I'm sure it's happening across all organizations where there are pockets created very thoughtfully about just spurring the innovation.
Indeed. Yeah. So it's the entire end-to-end spectrum of things, right? Like you rightly said, you have to run the business and you have to continuously transform as well. All right, quickly moving on to the next one. Interesting question. Explainable techniques are more prone to adversarial attacks. If the surplus in KPI, for example, accuracy, by adopting an ML model over traditional techniques like logistic regression is marginal, aren't we better off with simple interpretable model? So I think this question is more about, are we over engineering some of the small problems?
I think yes, we always, whenever we build any type of model, we always build models and then understand which is more giving the best explainability, which is giving the best solution, not only from accuracy perspective. As I was talking about, accuracy is yes one of the outcomes, but it has to be much more explainable, unbiased, and should be able to give justification to business. So yes, if a traditional model give us the nearby accuracy, there is no second thought of adopting those models in the industry. And I think in BFSI, logistic regression works really well, except any other model. But yes, now the way we are getting data from all different sources, as Nitin and Anshu were talking about, that we have tons and tons of data coming. Building a traditional modeling approach is not at all practical majority of the time. So that is the reason we are evolving with the newer technology and newer models which are coming from AI.
Sure. Thank you. I think the next question I'll point to, either one of you from the insurance side. The question is, are insurance companies, IT departments growing more adept at InsurTech integration? So essentially kind of, co-creating, working with InsurTech firms.
Sorry, Anshu, could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is, are insurance IT departments, I think, basically the technology departments, growing more skilled or more adept at InsurTech integrations?
Yes, definitely. I think examples I was citing, right? I think for a Fitbit, what is essentially, I think it kind of relate to the first question also. We are getting into an age of building the ecosystem. The ecosystem is not only with the customers as the king. Now the InsurTech company and the partnership, everything we can't do. I think even previous question, whether to startups or even like the fintechs and the traditional company. So there is no one solution. Everybody will have some kind of advantage. And I think what is important is like the flexibility. So it's also in terms of the strategy also. I think almost every IT company strategy is twofold strategy. One is definitely to have the inbuilt skill set, as well as have like where you can go get partnership and because I think that's where, because some of the cases this is like the faster go to market strategy as well, which I
Absolutely.
respect.
Absolutely. And I think the internal systems also are evolving, right? If you build API touch points, then it's much faster to integrate with any external provider. So I think, that is happening. And I think those are some of the design principles that everybody in the technology space is adhering to. All right. How can AI ML bolster the claim settlement process?
I think it is already happening. So basically, in insurance, we call it auto adjudication, and I think most of the insurance company are already using it. Where if you think like 10 years down, back, people have to do a lot of documentation, a lot of paperwork in order to get the claim settled. But right now, there are models in place which actually you have to just scan your document, and there are NLP models who will actually pick the relevant information. And for majority of claim, I won't say 100%, but basically 70 to 80% of the claims can be settled without a review by an adjuster. Because at the end of the day, there are certain rules and there are certain mathematical rules which may be coming from rule or maybe some AI model. It can easily predict whether it's a fraud claim or whether it's a regular claim. So I think AI and ML is actually already helping in the process of claim settlement. And I think in most of the organization, 60 to 70% is already getting automated done. And I think there is still a scope with the improvement in the algorithms. We can see improvement further, maybe in the time of the claim settlement, etc. But it's already there and it's already helping.
Yeah, I think as Himanshu talked about, just to add there, it's not only claim settlement, a lot of them are coming as a pre-approved claim settlement. So you don't even have to worry about it.
It's
So
like
I think
proactive settlement, yeah.
Correct, proactive settlement.
And
So
I think one point, Diva, sorry to interrupt you, and I think just wanted to add this point. One thing which is actually happening very interesting, insurance companies are also trying to proactively help customer that, if we can help you to be healthier, then there are less chances that you will actually put a claim, right? So the algorithms are also thinking in that direction. That maybe as Divraj, you are saying that, there are incentives if you wear Fitbit. And there are companies who will give you incentive. Maybe you have to pay less premium if you do these many rounds or these many steps, etc. And the whole reasoning over there is like, if the individual is healthy, then maybe they will put less claims, and which in turn will be beneficial for insurance company. So claim settlement, also the proactive settlement,
Claims
also, right?
Claims being eating into your I mean, basically, claims is a cost to the insurance company. Yeah. So you kind of reduce your cost, and it is not by kind of squeezing the claim, but actually educating the customer. You don't even perhaps you can reduce the claim or push it down the line. Absolutely. Amit, I believe the next question is something that you earlier alluded to. The question is that you talked about the enablers for the pull mechanism in the customer acquisition journey. Could you elaborate on that? What are some of the pull mechanisms? Or what are some of the enablers?
Yeah, so Himanshu, I think just gave an example, which is a pull mechanism, right? Because 4 years ago, when we ran our startup accelerator, we engaged with a health insurance company, a tech player, and we created this entire ecosystem where the objective was to make people healthy, and wellness was the highest quotient. Yeah, and even if and of course we attached the insurance product along with that, which meant people will get discount if their health score is good, if they have been active, if they've been eating good healthy diet and all that stuff. Yeah, so the point here is that even for millennials, yeah, they would like to have a product like this that throughout the year, yeah, they pay a premium for the product. And of course, no one wants to go to hospital, right? So no one really wants claim to come in. And if no such claim incidence is happening, at least they have got a lot of value in this, right? So they got a free variable along with that solution. They got consultation from wellness coach. Each and every individual can define, I want to do yoga, or maybe I want to gain weight, someone wants to lose weight. Everyone has a different objective at the end of the day. Someone wants to just take care of the mental wellness, and then accordingly they are getting the value throughout the contract, even if the claim is not getting triggered. So it creates a win-win, because the individual customer is healthy, Insurance company doesn't have to pay claims. And from a tech perspective, you build this entire ecosystem with a range of partners who can just participate in this entire thing. So that becomes a pull product, because then I, as an individual, will say, I really want this solution and not just a protection product. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it just brings about a different level of trust in the customer, right? It's not just about the companies trying to make money off the customers or making money. I think it is also kind of investing in their well-being, etc. And that's
Exactly.
like value add. Sure. Folks, thanks a ton for this wonderful conversation. So much to learn, so much to reflect upon. We started talking about how data journey is and how the digital journey adoption has happened. The data trail that now is very, very rich. Thanks to the pandemic year that companies went through and all of that. The importance of IoT and all the wearables, we've seen some great examples of it's actually being used in business as well. Talking about the tech mindset, building the tech assets, etc. And of course, great insights, Dwi, from your side on what the government is supporting in terms of regulation and thinking forward. Dr. Shivani, brilliant ideas and brilliant thoughts on the unbanked and the lesser banked and what are those opportunities. I think that's great food for thought as well. And also, of course, we talked about how this all can be accelerated. It was absolutely my pleasure to be speaking to all of you today. And I'll hand this back to the 3AI team.
So thanks so much, Anshu. This is Samir, and sorry, I'm into an inaccessible location. That's the reason cannot switch on the camera, but very riveting and engrossing conversation. And one of the yardstick of a successful roundtable we can always think about is the kind of questions which come in. And if you see the kind of questions, I'm sure it simply amplifies the kind of job you've done. If I just take, and this is for the audience, just take the whole sum total of experience of these 6 leaders out here, and I have a privilege of knowing them individually over the years. I can tell you, hands down, this is by far the most eclectic and the marquee set of leaders you will find, not only the analytics or AI space, but also on the business side, because each one of them, not only in terms of the current work sphere, what they're trying to do is to elevate analytics AI to the next level, but they're also redefining the organizations, essentially the banks and insurance and the reinsurance companies they're working for. And this was all amplified in terms of the squeeze of the experience and the nuggets which came out as part of their takeaways for this session. Extremely engrossing. Thank you so much, Anshu, for being the right anchor, because I could not think of anyone but you. And Amit, it's always a kind of a, let's say, pleasure to have you at such forums. You have a big task of kind of running Swiss Re. So thanks for sparing time always. And Dhiraj, I mean, Bajaj Reinsurance, or rather Bajaj Alliance, has a lot of things to do. And I'm sure you came out of your meetings as well. Shivani, you have a great task ahead in terms of building the Geo, and all the best for you. And MetLife, I think you have some open positions going over there. Himanshu, get it filled fast. Maybe now you will see a stream of kind of profiles coming in. And Nitin, you call yourself an accidental data scientist, but let me tell you, this is for the audience, he's by far one of the most earliest and the most reckoned data scientist and AI kind of a, let's say, leader in the industry today. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, all the panelists.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And have a good weekend,
everyone. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.